Welcome to Failing for You, where I'll fail so you don't have to, or even better yet, so you can too. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Failing for You. It is me, your host, Jordan Yates, and today I am joined by Adam Kimmel. And I'm excited to have him on because, as many of you may know, if you're in our more industrial, high tech industry, that there's usually this gap between marketing and the engineers that have this like really technical know how and then communicating their ideas and then it could be a little bit rough sometimes. Adam is very experienced as an engineer as well as transitioned into the marketing arena. So I'm really excited to have him on today. Like I said, this is near and dear to my heart because I've lived this experience as well. So without further ado, Adam, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here, Jordan.
But real quick, before we get started, let's hear a quick message from our sponsors.
Meet David Turner at Turner Process Solutions. Join us at the Assembly Show South in Nashville on May 1st and 2nd. Find us at booth 1360. Use code TPSVIP for free registration. Discover our expert services, process and material handling, industrial automation and controls, functional safety analysis, systems integration project management, and plant energy cost savings. Turner Process Solutions, your partner in innovation. Visit us at assemblymag.com for event details.
Go ahead, push our buttons. Actually, you don't have to physically push our buttons at all. Here at Kaptron, we specialize in innovative capacitive sensor technologies, which means better ergonomics for your workplace. And unlike mechanical buttons that break or malfunction after repeated use, our sensors are rated for 100 million operations. Durability is the name of the game, and we're winning! And you can be too. Visit Kaptron at Automate 2024 in Chicago, Illinois on May 6th through 9th at booth 2886 or visit Kaptron.com. Kaptron. Install once, replace never.
In technical marketing, I typically hear a lot of colleagues, come from journalism, come from more communication-focused disciplines. For me, I'm a straight-up engineer. I was a calculator head for about 15 years. I did numerical modeling, analysis of heat exchangers and thermal systems, mainly in the HVAC and energy space. So I worked on hydrogen fuel cells and electric vehicles, some of the kind of renewable energy fun type of stuff. I worked in manufacturing shops, designing prototypes that we would test in some of our systems. So I got, really familiar with the tolerancing and the design, elements of things. And what I realized is if you develop something complicated, somebody has to understand it before they're willing to buy it from you. And that's really where right. And that's really where I started to see this gap where I would talk and people would stare at me. And I would kind of go, are you with me? Or do you need me to kind of go back? And then they would say, well, what you just explained, can you 3 bullet point that for me? And then could you write a little summary of it? And so that's really where the technical marketing came in. And I started about almost 10 years ago now, developing these kind of technical things for the company I worked with at the time internally. And I thought, well, if they liked it, maybe others will too. And so now I do this for anybody out there in the space.
I love that. And I want to hone in on the point where you're like, you say all these technical things, and many times in our industry, even being a technical one, marketing folks are traditional marketing folks. They went to college, they studied marketing, they studied journalism, and they never took a thermo class. They never took an engineering class. And then they're expected to write about this and market these like really technical things. And then meanwhile, we have our engineers, which I'm an engineer as well. I think I had one engineering for writers like class, and like I had to like practice like writing reports, but I never learned really well how to like break down my ideas and communicate them to someone who wasn't technical. And when you're technical for so long, you don't realize the things that just seem inherently like just common knowledge when it's not common knowledge at all. Like it is, you are technical, you've studied this for years. So Was it ever frustrating on your end trying to communicate at first these technical ideas to non-technical people? Can you walk us through that in some ways yeah, I don't know, it might have been difficult?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's for the technical team that's in the work day in, day out, a lot of times they're disconnected from customer discussions day to day. So they're very insulated. And there's this assumption that everybody is on the same level with the depth of knowledge they have because the people you talk to day are all there with you. So you don't have
Mm-hmm.
to ramp anybody up, they're already there. As soon as you start getting outside to a customer or to a business leader or someone outside of the immediate work team, that's where things start to break down. And so I think being aware and sensitive to how the information is being received. Do they seem distracted? Are they giving these cues of arms crossing or kind of frowning or squinting to try to really catch on to what you're saying? If that starts to happen, then it's time to zoom out a little bit. But I think the fact that a lot of technical people are very insulated, was the issue. And breaking through that and starting to understand what those cues were, to change an approach,
Yeah.
is really what I found to be helpful.
What was your approach like before you got more fine-tuned at delivering your ideas? Were you ever just like, can you just Google it? Like, come on, man. Like, I told you what I told you. Figure it out.
Well, the
Or are you
first one was just
patient?
it depends on with who.
Yeah.
Right. But what I actually went the other way, I would say, well, if you don't believe me as an expert, read this journal paper. And so
Mm-hmm.
for anyone that's ever read a journal paper, those things are not on any planet meant to be interesting. It almost feels like they're meant to be complicated to exclude people from understanding things. So you've got to be a really good expert to catch on. And when you read those journal papers, I started thinking, well, who really is reading this? I mean, okay,
Mm-hmm.
the peer review team, but beyond that, unless you're really into the topic. So that's when I started to say, all right, well, if somebody really wants information, this is the last place they should go.
Yeah.
So what's the first place? And I found that it didn't really exist. And so then that's where I started to go, all right, well, what are some of the questions that I would hear? Let's just document those and answer them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if one group has it, maybe another one would if it's a customer or a business leader. And so then I started to say, all right, well, here's the journal paper. I'm going to do the opposite of that. And then take these questions that people may understand and kind of frame it that way and then just test it, right? Just like we
Yeah.
do in marketing, just to see what resonates. Are people playing back to you things that you've said? If they
Mm-hmm.
are, they're with you. If they're not, okay, maybe you didn't hit it right. So that's how I approached it.
No, I like that because the journal paper thing's kind of funny because when I worked at Knowles and we would work with True Marketing to like send them, some usually we would like do a spec doc, outline what we wanted to say, and then we would send some supporting research to them. Well, one day I just had this really hard to explain topic and I was kind of frustrated with it. So I just sent them all these links and they were like, one of them was like a 300-page report. And my boss immediately flagged it. He's like, Jordan, you really want these people to go out there and read this 300-page report? No. Your job is to summarize it for them, take a step back, actually explain to them what's in the paper. If there's like 1 or 2 pages, pull it out, give it to them, but do not expect them to have to go be an expert when you're the expert. Like you need to break it down for them. And so after doing that, I was like, okay, I'm just being lazy. Like it is very difficult to break that information down. If there's somebody that's listening that's, which a lot of engineers listen to this or technical people, can you kind of walk them through step by step, like how you go about breaking down technical information for non-technical marketing or any kind of person you're communicating it to?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do, and in content that I create, it tends to get the most engagement and interest. So
Mm-hmm.
say there's a graph. If someone really understands the topic, they can look at a graph and tell you a story,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know that everyone one would think of it like that, but graphs, an engineer or someone who's an expert in the field would look at that graph differently than those that wouldn't. They would maybe pull the top level trend out, but to be able to look at that and say why is kind of the magic. And so I look at it like a word problem. Word problems as a kid, I have two teenagers that hate word problems and kick and scream when they have to do them in math class, but
Yes.
those are stories. And so translating those words into something that you can solve is really the muscle that they're trying to strengthen. So then when I would look at a graph or technical data, I would kind of say, all right, well, why did we even generate this data? What was the purpose of this experiment? And
Mm-hmm.
then what's the message and story? Well, what did we expect to see? what did we see, and what does that mean? And then the most important thing would be, all right, well, what do you do as a result of this?
Yeah.
Another test, whatever. And I think thinking of it as a story, I tend to think everything is a story these days. There's a reason it's done, but until you come to why you're even looking at it in the first place, there isn't a need to go any deeper or further.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that getting people, on board with why we're even looking or talking about this in the first place is the key to getting their attention. So once you have their attention, you've kind of won the right to go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, here's why we did what we did, and here's the test we ran. What were my assumptions? Are the assumptions ones that are obvious to make or not? And once you walk through those, then you've again won the right to go further to say, here's the graph and the trend.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the takeaway, even when I write graph summaries, there's a CTA at the end to say, what
Yeah.
does this graph say and what do we do? How should we advise the business as a result of this? And I think too often people just send a report. Here's some data. Here's an inspection report.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these dimensions are in, some are out. Okay, can I ship the
And
part? Can I sell
yeah.
100,000 more of them at this level? And I think that interpretation and analysis is the part that really good technical marketers do well, and that's kind of what separates great marketers from good.
Yeah, and for anybody who isn't as savvy on the lingo, CTA is a call to action. Now, this is like everything in marketing is like, okay, why are we doing this? Like, what's the point? Because you could have this big pile of research, but then it's like, okay, and like, what's the point? Like, what is our view? What's our angle? Like, how are we going to break it down? Like, what's the story, as you said, that goes with it? So I'm curious, with your call to actions that you get out of research, like what's the typical route that you like to go of, hey, I have all this research, now I want to get someone to buy it, or like what's like a way that you go about your call to actions?
Often with like R&D and high complexity parts, it's just too nuanced to, like, you need a conversation. So the goal is to
Mm-hmm.
get the conversation with people that are knowledgeable and that can make the decision. So the goal is to get deeper engagement as almost a technical partnership. So if you do it right, the goal is that next conversation. So reach out to our team, that kind of thing. But there's also I think it's important not to be so linear with it, because if you try to put someone in terms of, okay, the call to action is either reach out to us or nothing. And
Yeah.
if they're not ready, you're done. Like the journey's over. So I like to have, if you're ready to talk to someone, here's that angle. Here's another resource, or a white paper, or a video that we have explaining this even more to give you more details. Or here's a few external resources, third party. So trying to meet them where they are in the journey, because trying to assume that, all right, well, after reading this, you are certainly ready to talk to us. Get your
Yeah.
sales staff on. We'll get quotes and POs going. Not everybody's there. They may still need more information to kind of feel confident before they get to that step.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a question. So there's sometimes like knowledge pieces where we just want to establish ourselves as experts in the industry and we put it out saying, hey, we really understand this concept. Is there ever like a time where there's a place for a knowledge piece without a call to action and it's just like, hey, we're showing ourselves as experts? Or is it always like we should try to always, tie it into a CTA?
Well, I think it depends, but a lot of times if you spend too much time talking about how great and knowledgeable you are, that can have the
Mm-hmm.
counter effect. You again have to win the right to talk about yourself. And so one of the
Mm-hmm.
ways to do that is to show a market view. Here's a competitive technology. You never want to bash competitors. Competitors exist for a reason. It's a good thing. It's healthy for the reader and consumer.
Mm-hmm.
But for companies and brands to explain, well, here's, kind of an incumbent technology. Here's us. Here's where we're better. Here's where they're better. The
Mm-hmm.
authority that builds from a awareness standpoint of what the solutions are for, where you fit, why you exist, the credibility is off the charts. You don't even have to say anything after that. It's inherent. You earn it
Yeah.
throughout those kind of comparisons. So then the call to action is, I don't know. I don't find it to be, as, at least in our industry, I don't feel that it's such a critical piece. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just giving them a next step if they're willing to take it. But
Yeah.
if you've done that credibility piece, they're going to remember that, and they're going to know, oh, if I want more information, I know where I can go as a source for that information. And then when they're ready, what is it? 98% of the market isn't ready to buy at the moment.
Yeah.
You want to sell it to them. So be top of mind, and you do that through credibility earning.
Absolutely. So we've established, you kind of have the understanding of, the background of what it's like to be an engineer, what it's like to communicate to non-technical people. All of this has summed up to you creating your business. Tell us about when you decided to go out on your own and what that looked like. Oh, and what your business is.
Sure. So I do, as you might imagine, technical content is a
No
cornerstone
way.
of all of it, right? I started as a writer, as many of us do, trying to, tell these stories. But what I quickly found is that what people would ask me for wasn't really what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
They would ask me for an article about a topic that their competitor just published. Well, bad news. You're already behind. You're not going to do as good of a job as they are. You're going to rush through it. That's not going to work for you. And one article is never going to move any needle on anything. So I started developing content strategies for technical companies. So I started in the industrial space. I have expertise in automotive, in electronics. I have no engineering experience, but I somehow became an electronics expert writer
Yeah.
through all of this. And so that's what I do now. I partner kind of for mid to long term engagements with with those types of companies and get into their why they exist, what's their point of view, and really help them articulate that through and develop content strategies that different use cases can amplify that point of view and why it's so important to think differently, why the need to change, and just to give some of those context pieces versus feature, benefit. How many can we put you down for?
Mm-hmm.
It's a much more educational thought leadership for marketers, that kind of middle funnel authority building piece that I help companies with now.
Very cool. So I don't know if this is proprietary to your process, but can you walk us through what intake is like? Say I'm a technical company and I need your services, or I think I need your services. Like, what do you ask me to determine if I'm a good fit? I could just make up a company off the top of my head and we can role play it. Like, ask me
Sure.
your questions.
Yeah. Well, the first one I would want to know is, people reach out because they like the fact that I speak fluent engineer. I say this all the time. It's all
Oh,
over my
that's
LinkedIn.
genius. Oh, that's
I've actually
good.
had people, just that line has gotten me people reaching out. But
Oh, I love that.
yeah, speaking fluent engineer is a big one. But then I'll try to see where they are. So I'll
Okay.
ask, like, to role play it. I would say, do you have a strategy in mind already? Where are you coming from with your technical content?
Okay, let's pretend I'm a robot integrator. You want to do that?
Sure. Yeah, we can.
Okay, Jordy's bots. Let's see. Well, I like to post pictures with my robot because I think it's cool. Does that count as a strategy?
Yeah, I think we're done. No, not so.
Sometimes I'll send an email, not on any sort of, schedule, but just when I think of a good idea, I send an email, and then yeah, I'll occasionally post a quick video, but I don't have a schedule. I just do it when I feel inspired.
So, what is the business opportunity that you're trying to solve? What is the market need that you're going for?
So I'm working on palletizing solutions utilizing my robots. I come in, program them, and I'll work with a lot of different OEMs because they are like good at all the other stuff down the line on the palletizing, but I'm really good at the robot part. So I come in and I'll program my robot for the OEMs, and there's a lot of palletizing machines out there. And so I'm like, I want to talk to them, but I don't really know how.
So that programming piece is the gap. How are they doing it today without what you can help them with?
I mean, some of them are trying to figure it out in-house and they're just like they're really struggling, and then other people will just hire people like me, just really expert robot programmers, really incredibly smart.
So if
We're the
they
best at what we do. You hear that often?
best customer service, best people in the industry, yeah, once or twice.
We're a family.
Yeah. So if they didn't have an expert programmer come in, what's the impact to their business, and what's the downside of the do nothing solution?
The do nothing solution be that their palletizing operations may not be as good, and it could take them a lot longer to program it before getting it out the door. And so they have longer lead times, and then their revenue cycles are a lot longer, so they're not bringing in money as fast. Whereas if they brought me and my team in, we can help them program it faster, and then they can make money faster.
So it's an ROI conversation. There's an investment on the front end, maybe, or to start the engagement, but there's some back end, faster return and maybe increased capacity that could result. Am I hearing that right?
Of course, and all my customers are really happy.
Everyone, right?
Everyone, and I want
Good,
to tell people.
good. Well, would any of them, because of how happy they are, be willing to give you some numbers to share some of these ROI information? That could be a really powerful, at least content stream to say, here's the impact that we've seen. I mean, have you thought through that, or are those numbers?
Well, if I give those numbers, will my competitors see it and use it against me?
If your competitors are using numbers that you're boosting ROI against you, then they're going to lose in a big way. So,
Okay,
yeah.
good to know. I was worried. Data and competitors is scary.
Well, that's a typical, objection point. But then my question would be, what are the competitors sharing in their marketing, and what kinds of topics do they talk about to justify their existence and right to win?
They just tell everybody how good they are, but they're really consistent about it. They don't share a lot of numbers, but they're always like on it. Like I signed up for their weekly newsletter, and they're sending it weekly, and they post all the time, and they have really good infographics, and I'm just out here posting selfies.
I kind of want to do this. What would we do if it was the wrong way? But I want to say, well, if jargon is what they provide, then they're doing great. Just
Yeah.
all jargon, no numbers. Engineers love that. That's a perfect strategy. So anyway, that's the way that I kind of would think through it. Is if you're not competing against numbers are going to win. If you're competing against a superior technology, then maybe the responsiveness, maybe the technical partnership and depth of engagement. I mean, there's always a way to say we're the best partner
Mm-hmm.
in a contextual way that matters to a client versus we're the best, trust us. You haven't earned the
Okay.
right to be trusted yet. So that's those kind of questions try to pull out some proof points and data to say,
Mm-hmm.
well, why should you trust us, and what's the and fear being such a powerful one. What's the risk if I don't do anything? What's it costing me? Because it's probably not nothing, but I just don't understand what that is. So
Yeah.
framing that from that standpoint can be powerful too.
Okay, so now that I understand my value, what kind of content should I be putting out? Like what's relevant in my industry? Do I need to make a TikTok? I've heard I need to make a TikTok.
I don't know why anybody would need to make it. TikToks are good. I mean, I don't know. It depends on the audience, right? I think the younger the audience, the more impactful that can be. Short form video is impactful. So if there's a demonstration or feature that's really like the wow factor in seeing it is there, then
Mm-hmm.
sure. But I'm a big proponent of cornerstone long form content. I mean, that's what I provide. So I hope I'm a
That's
proponent of
great.
that, right? Yeah. But it's this, what's the manifesto or the base point of view of everything, and then you can take that in any number of ways, right? You can put a little blog campaign as a spin-off, a mini
Mm-hmm.
campaign off of a couple items there. Do an interview series with internal subject matter experts. I mean, using that expertise and some of the brand equity of experts in the industry is key. I mean, having them author some of these articles or writing it under their byline can go a long way. I mean, these are people that people go to conferences to hear, so they certainly would probably read something they wrote. Or if there's a little interview series, I've seen little like conversations like this, internal though,
Yeah.
like just interview an expert and ask them the questions that you want them to be telling everyone about. So there's that, but I think it has to start with the deep cornerstone content, because a lot of it is, companies want to start at the end and say, what's the blog post that we need to write? But you have to get to why you need it and what it should say through the
Mm.
strategy arm. And I think that's best done through, these cornerstone pieces, and then splitting those into different kind of middle of funnel, to think of it that way, thought leadership, and then splitting those out into different other elements.
Okay, I'm stepping back into regular Jordan. Jordy's bots is side piece or sideline now. So based on that, would you say that they would be a good candidate for your services?
For sure. I actually worked with a company recently that was their exact problem. They had, I mean, it wasn't necessarily those bots, but it was this.
Jordy's bots?
Yeah, yeah, TM, right? Let's let's but it was a similar ROI situation where it was this technical partnership where it was a kind of a front end investment with a back end return,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole goal was capacity. It was, demand is basically unconstrained for what we're doing. We'll sell every part we can make. So how do we make as many parts as we possibly can? So then the team was challenged with going back and saying, how can we leverage automation, AI, all the things that you hear about to get this capacity numbers up, to get the operating efficiencies higher? And what's the point of view as to why our solution is best suited to do that?
Yeah.
And so that, when it's clear like that and there are numbers, then it's easy. If you have the numbers, the story falls out of that.
Yeah.
So then it was just a matter of, all right, well, let's just tell people about, the power that they can, expect from this. If you're willing to invest, here's what you'll get. If you're not,
Mm-hmm.
these dollars are on the table. So there's your decision point. And then leave it to them. And then that's often where some other questions come, like, well, what if we got one versus four of these automation solutions or something? And that's, a lot of times why the CTA is just reach out to us. Let's start
Yeah.
talking more. If what we provide will solve your problem, it continues the discussion.
No, absolutely. And it's funny, you know, I've been on the receiving end of the like intro calls before of like, hey, what do you need? Like, what are you currently doing? And it's always funny because it's like most people think of marketing last in this industry. We're so technology focused of like we have this awesome solution, we have awesome engineering, but then they don't know how to tell anybody about it and they grew too fast and they're making all this money and they're like, we want to grow more, but all of a sudden our brand identity has been lost. We aren't exactly sure how to communicate it. And that's why I think it's really cool to have businesses like yours in this industry that can help people speak fluent engineer and get them out there with their message, because it's not that they're a bad company, they just are missing a really critical like communication piece in it. So we're getting closer to the end of our time, but I wanted to ask, is there any points in your business that you've experienced either like a major fail or you've seen a customer do something absolutely insane, and what did you learn from it?
I think whenever you think technical marketing, and a lot of it's this organic search piece, people are nervous to invest because they don't immediately see the value of marketing. And so marketing becomes this nice to have when times are good that people say, okay, now we can invest in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't be more opposite of the way that you should do it, right? Because if the phone is ringing, then you don't need it. But when the phone stops ringing, you're going to really, really wish that you've done that work on the, going up to it. And so what I see is for thought leadership campaigns, it does take about 3 to 4 months before meaningful traffic and lead gen start to come in. And when companies treat marketing as a discretionary expense, marketing treats them like a discretionary expense. It's a transaction where
Yeah.
if you throw articles at things, there's no direction, and it can almost have the counter effect where you're confusing the market and the readers.
Mm.
So, content without strategy is a losing effort, and it really isn't going to work, and it can have the opposite effect. So winning companies are realizing this, partnering with people in their industry to kind of bridge the gap from sales, hearing these pain points, technology and engineering, developing solutions, linking those together, and then retelling that to the market to explain that to them. So when that's done right, things go well. But and why I exist is that it goes wrong more than it goes right these days too.
It does. And that's why, like, anytime I'm out there, like, meeting customers and I see something where it's like almost a good fit for my business, but it's a better fit for somebody else, like, I'm always very willing to just hand it off to the better fit. And they're like, why are you like, do you not like us? And I'm like, no, like, I just think this company's a better fit. And they're like, well, don't you need customers? And I'm like, trust me, this problem is there. Everyone has it. Like, the market share, like, we're good. Like, everybody that's in our position helping technical companies communicate their message, there's more than enough for all of us to eat. And so I am never worried when I pass off a customer because there's just so many technical companies that need help with this. And it's just a really fun space to be in, I think. Like it's really exciting. I like watching companies go from being like really chaotic and messy to having a smoother message. And it's because I've been in places where I've like literally created content for companies with not a great strategy because they said they had it handled. And then eventually I'm like, okay, I'm not creating more content until we have a strategy to go with it. Like the two must be connected, it's crazy when they're not.
And I think it's important to realize what you're told, what you're being told, and what you're seeing. Because to just assume like, oh, you have a strategy, you're good. Let's see it. Let's understand it. Explain it to me. Like as simple as that sounds, it can cost you time and possibly the right fit. So yeah, I mean it's important to be honest with yourself as far as a service provider, as a technical marketer, to say, is this really the right strategy? Does this align with what I can do to help? If not,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe pass off to a colleague, maybe push back and say, really we need a strategy engagement before we just start creating blog series. And that education piece, I think, goes a long way too with establishing credibility, and it helps. Usually there's some poor marketer internally overwhelmed, under-resourced,
Yep.
that would appreciate that level of honesty and transparency versus, yeah, I'll just take whatever work you give me and kind of make it work. It's not a long-term solution that way.
Exactly. Amen to that. Well, Adam, we are just about at the end of our time. Is there anything else you want to say to the listeners before we sign off?
I mean, I just thank you. I appreciate the conversation, and this opportunity I think is there. And I think it's important for listeners to realize if you have this need, just like what you said, there are many options for how to get this distance between your technology and your customer base shortened. And bringing on somebody that has this expertise is a really smart way to do that. It's an easy on, easy off kind of a situation versus adding headcount, which is why kind of the freelancer or fractional model is so helpful. So, but it is a long-term play, so be patient.
Yeah, amen to that. So, guys, I will put Adam's like website and contact information down below and like his LinkedIn. So, if you're like, hey, this guy is speaking my language, I need his help, I will give you all the info so you can reach out to him and get the help you need. But, guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Failing for You. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Yates. And in the meantime, I'll be failing for you. See you next week.